Welcome back to the studio, and I'm here with Tony, the great Tony Ely today.
Yeah, I don't know about so much about that, but sounds good.
Sit here and bullshit a little bit. You work at the 160th right now, but not as a pilot any longer, but as a instructor.
Yeah, combat skills instructor for combat skills Green Platoon for the unit. Yes, sure do.
But you started off your career as a ranger.
Yes.
In Batt, not just a ranger school person, but in Batt.
Yep,
Which
yep.
Batt was it?
First Ranger Battalion.
First Batt.
Yeah, First Ranger Battalion in Savannah.
Right.
Yep.
Was that a good time?
Yeah, of course, when I came in the Army, I came in 1987, and throughout high school, Army slogan back then was "Be all you can be."
Right.
And I remember some of those commercials, and a couple commercials I remember about that in particular was the one where the guys are jumping in, and you got the paratrooper there. He's got his cup of coffee early in the morning, and you probably remember that one, right? Remember that one? And he's like, "Good morning, First Sergeant." And so that was the influence for the airborne type thing. Mm-hmm. And the other thing was the other commercial. There's it's specific to the Rangers. Shows the Rangers doing some rappelling in. They were haloing in and jumping, and at the very end, it shows the guy in his Class A's in a jet. He's coming to visit his family on leave, and he comes out and gives him a big hug and the black beret. And those two commercials pretty much sold me on the airborne ranger type thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So you went straight into Batt.
Yeah.
How long were you there?
So my whole first enlistment, so minus basic and AIT, 4 years.
Oh,
I mean, minus that part.
Bad.
So my first enlistment.
Also, thanks for the 4 roses you gave me a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Pretty cool. So,
what
are you drinking over there?
I'm drinking some Woodford Reserve. Yeah, a buddy of mine bought me that, so that's what. Cheers.
Buddy of mine got me some Woodford Reserve for taking him on the range.
Right.
He's a future A15.
Oh, cool.
Team leader, and he needed some work, and I took him down the range and worked with his handguns because he's not fresh out of West Point, but he went 101st Q course.
Oh, so now here in the Q course. Gotcha.
Yeah, so he's fresh out of it.
Yeah, Woodford's pretty good stuff.
Yeah,
double oak's pretty tasty.
Yeah, I read that people wait in line for that, but he's like, he just walked right in and got it. I was like, well, maybe it's an exaggeration on waiting on the line thing.
Well, I guess if you get to distillery, it might be a little bit line, but generally, double oaked is you can go buy it most
anywhere.
Yeah, most liquor stores.
Today though, when you first got here, I put you on the flight simulator.
Yeah,
on my flight simulator, and I did that for a reason because you went from Ranger Batt to flight school.
Actually, it was a ranger instructor in between.
Ranger instructor?
Yeah.
Where at?
Dahlonega in the mountains. So I taught, responsible for teaching mountaineering to ranger students and also evaluating patrolling and stuff like that.
And then you went to flight school. What? Why?
So this is the reason why I went to flight school. So when I was in 1st Ranger Battalion in Savannah, we were in the field and had been in the swamps and stuff down there at Fort Stewart. I always call it Fort Stupid, by the way.
Right.
So we're in the field there, and the air corridor is Highway 144 going through Fort Stewart. And I was kind of nasty from being in the field, been in the swamps, water, to probably, knee to waist level. And anyway, we're doing a foot march down Highway 144, which is also the air corridor, like I said. And all these helicopters are flying over, and I got my big fat heavy rucksack and my M16. And I remember walking down 144 on the side of the road and looking up and see all the helicopters flying over. I'm like, that has got to be better than this. So anyway, that was the motivation to eventually go to flight school. And also, I remember coming up to Fort Campbell doing this mission. It's called Gunsmoke. We'd go out to Range 29, which Little Birds do their gunnery. And that's where they would introduce the customers. Of course, I was a customer at the time, Ranger, to doing call for fires and stuff. I had to call the Little Birds, the AHs, in to do call for fire. And I went up and talked to one of the pilots, and I still remember the guy's name. His name was Randy Jones, and he was a Little Bird pilot. I think he was even a plank holder of the unit.
Sounds like a pilot's name.
Yeah,
too.
yeah, Randy Jones. And I remember going up to him and asking him questions about the helicopter and flying and flight school and stuff like that. And I just had a lot of interest in aviation, you know, at that time. And, you know, eventually, of course,
But, of course, he was 160th.
Yes.
And you were still in Batt.
Yep, still in
So
Ranger
that
Batt.
bridge is still a very long bridge because, A, you got to get accepted to go to flight school.
Yeah.
I mean, these hurdles you had to take to do that. You had to be accepted to go to flight school, attend walk,
Yeah, Warren for Canada School. Yep.
flight school, and then go be a pilot somewhere else, right?
Yes.
Is that how that went?
So,
So go through some of that because
So-
the gap between becoming a pilot and 160th is massive.
yes, it is.
So let's talk about the first few things first, and then we'll get to that.
Well, I'll start off with filling out the flight packet.
Right.
Okay. So when I was stationed in Dahlonega as a Ranger instructor, we were owned by Fort Benning, which Soldiers Plaza at Fort Benning was the servicing personnel support center for us. Dahlonega, Georgia, Fort Benning is 3 hours one way roughly. And that's back in the day, much before the internet, where you have to go to the personnel service center to get the application. Well, driving 3 hours one way to Fort Benning to get the application, yeah, it totally sucked. So I'd drive down to get the application, to go pick it up, drive back to Dahlonega, obviously just to work on my application. And with that, there's some other hurdles you have to do. One is taking a flight physical and a written test, or a testing, which is called the FAST test at the time. So I had to study for that. Of course, they don't give the FAST test in Dahlonega. They do it in Fort McPherson in Atlanta, which is an hour and a half one way roughly. So again, I had to study for that, go down there and take it. Once that was taken and I passed, I had to go down there for my flight physical.
Now, the passing for that, what was the criteria or the 70 or
That number, I'm not 100%.
Is there a number?
There is a number that's passing. 90 rings a bell, but I'm not 100% sure. I remember
we're going to call it that, Chief. How's
yeah,
that?
I scored a one. It was either 123 or 124 to do that, to pass that.
Right.
That my GT scores within a point from each other. One's a 123 and one's a 124. So anyway, I wound up taking all the FAST test, the flight physical. Man, the crazy thing, I remember going down to Fort McPherson and we'd get our eyes dilated as part of the flight physical. And me and my buddy, a guy named Dwayne Collins, who was a 2nd Battalion Ranger, he was also a Ranger instructor with me. We're driving around 285 around Atlanta with our eyes dilated with
At night?
Oh no, it's during the day. During the day, rush hour traffic with the glasses on, and I can't believe we didn't get in a wreck on our way back to Dahlonega, driving an hour and a half. Yeah, that was pretty amazing. Just kind of crazy, just trying to drive with our eyes dilated. Yeah, but it wound up taking me about almost a year to fill out my flight application. And you have to get some letter recommendations.
To get all the other documents
Yeah,
together.
you got to get a
and all
couple
that.
letters of recommendation. You got to do a resume, which I printed on my buddy's dot matrix printer
Right.
back then, which you probably remember those.
Like buying a car at a dealership.
Yeah, yep, doing that on his Radio Shack Tandy computer, to be exact. Yeah, and to get my flight letter recommendation, I got it from Fullbird Colonel was in charge of the recruiting battalion down there in Atlanta. So I had to drive down there. Guy I happened to meet in Dahlonega for an open house that we had up there at the time. Yeah. So anyway, got my application all put in, got accepted for flight school. I was in Dahlonega, again, almost 4 years, 3.5 years, I think, before I went to flight school at Fort Rucker.
So you're looking at 8 years.
About 7 years, yeah, enlisted time,
Right.
roughly.
Before you went to walk.
Yeah, 7.5, yeah. Then go to Warren for Canada School. I think that was 6 weeks as a W1. That was a couple years after they changed it, because flight school students for a while were a Warren for Canada all the way through flight school. When I went through flight school and Warren for Canada School, they had changed it to when you graduate at walk. I was a W1.
You were a warrant, right.
W1, so that was about a year or two to after they changed that.
Did you have any SF guys in there with you? Any of those guys?
I'm trying to remember. I don't think we had a couple other guys. A guy that was SF.
Okay.
And going to flight school though.
Okay,
But I don't
gotcha.
think we had any SF guys, 18 series at the time,
right.
in my particular class.
So walk, then flight school, which we discussed a little bit when you were talking about your flight instructor that was a screamer.
Yeah, he was a screamer. A guy named Ralph Bourne, my stick buddy, a guy named Sean Woodman, who eventually wound up coming to the 160th. He was a Black Hawk pilot. He would always scream and yell at us, pointing at the instruments, 90 fucking knots, airspeed, altitude.
Not 91 fucking knots.
No, 90 knots, because I couldn't keep my airspeed, altitude, and travel pattern, stuff like that. Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah, it was a good time. Took about a year and a half by the time I graduated or started walk to flight school, because you do what they call primary, where you learn how to fly the helicopter, surf, and of course, hovering being obviously the hard part right there.
Which you'll probably watch it in B-roll right now.
Yeah, the hovering's not the easiest thing in the world to do. So I did all that in a TH-67 at the time, my primary, and then instruments was in a TH-67. Learned how to fly through the clouds and learn how to fly IFR basically. And then after that, we did basic combat skills. I did all that in UH-1.
Which you got to fly today.
Yep. Yeah, which was pretty cool flying UH-1.
So how's that experience? Let's go to that. How?
Yeah.
The simulator part. All right, so let's get to that just a little bit since we're talking about the aircraft. How did that compare? Besides not being able to feel forces on you, the controls and the reaction of the aircraft with the controls and all that.
It was cool. I mean, it was pretty neat. Brought back a lot of memories how hard it was to hover for obvious reasons. But it was pretty cool to look at the instrumentation and fly. I especially like the UH-1 because, when you come through, you can feel that shudder as you come in. You can watch the instrument panel move and stuff, and I kind of remember some of that.
Right.
Yeah, so it was pretty cool to be able to fly that.
If you don't know, I have a simulator because I have a fascination with flying, even though I couldn't. I was an SF guy, and I wasn't going to give that up. You know what I mean? So I have a simulator, which you guys are probably watching in B-roll right now. And me and Tim McKay, Uncle Tim, are both fascinated with flight, and we spent a lot of time up there flying that and fixed-wing aircraft. And now we just joined the DCS world. So Tim
was that other somebody or the other program
that second right, and so Tim's fascinated with F-18s, F-14s, carrier operations. So now we're just getting into that, and that whole world. And he bought some high-speed. Joystick. It's supposed to be like the real thing, and he brings his like, Byron, we're using this. So I'm like, okay. So I had to move my helicopter rig out of the way so he could,
which is definitely a lot better than your old one.
Yes, correct. The first one was a
lot of
PVC pipe that I made,
pipe.
But it worked.
It was actually pretty neat, I thought. Especially had your springs rigged up.
Right. Yep. And then for Christmas, Houston and Missy bought me some rig out of Switzerland, I believe. I forgot the name of the country. And they built it, and it took like a week to get here. And Missy put that together for me because I don't do puzzles; she does. And we figured it out, and that works pretty good. I can assign buttons now. Now all my stuff looks like real stuff and operates that way. So you graduate, and now you are assigned. Oh, excuse me. You have to go through flight school. You do the basic aircraft there. Then you do
it's a basic or primary instruments, basic combat skills. Right. One thing that was kind of unique when I went through that, the Hueys down there at the time had orange doors, and those aircraft would actually support Florida Ranger Camp. So I actually got to fly one of my buddies I knew from being an RI that was stationed in Florida. I actually got to fly him in UH-1 with the Ranger
student.
As a flight student,
right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
I got to actually. That was kind of cool for me.
And that's from when you were doing this.
Yeah. Full circle.
Right.
Yeah, full circle. And so we did that, and then he qualified under NVGs nights. So I did that in UH-1. Then I graduated. Well, actually, then you go to Warrant Officer Basic Course. Then I graduated flight school, and then I went into my advanced aircraft rating at the time is how they did it, and I flew OH-58D Cow Warriors is what I graduated with.
That's what Tim flew in Germany on the border all the time.
Yeah, KWs.
Yeah. So then you have to go to a unit.
Yeah, so I went to Fort Bragg. I flew in 117 Cav, part of the 82nd Airborne Division.
What bird?
82nd Air Brigade, the Cow Warrior.
Okay.
OH-58T.
Right.
And the cool thing at the time, being there, the whole 82nd Airborne Division was on jump status, including the Aviation Brigade. So as a warrant officer, W1 pilot, I still got the jump and jump master. So it brought me to my Ranger type days and airborne days. So I was
best of both worlds type days.
So I was flying and jumping at the same time, which they no longer do. Now they're all off jump status now.
Okay, fair enough, because you can't get them injured.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So then, after how long there, you reckon, at Bragg?
I was in the 82nd Airborne Division almost 4 years to the day.
Okay. During that time, you had to have decided, you know what? I want to be in 160th.
So obviously the 160th influence came from my Ranger days, working with Special Operations Aviation and Little Birds, and we'd fly in the Chinooks, and we did fly in some aircraft or Air Force stuff once in a while, 53s back then. But yeah, wanted to go to assess for the 160th. Actually, I submitted my application during flight school, and they said they would assess me after I go to my unit about a year. So I just go to my unit, 170 Cav, make pilot in command of the OH-58D, and I do come up here to Fort Campbell to assess. The assessment's about a week long.
So they bring you up to across the fence at that airfield, Cameron Airfield there, and then you go through some trial and error there to.
Yeah, so the assessment's roughly 5 days. During that 5-day time frame, they give you several psychological.
But there are other students there or
other
wannabes?
assessees, yes.
Called wannabes.
Yep.
Right.
So they give you actually you start off with a PT test. At the time, they wouldn't tell you. It was the Army PTS 3 event back then, but you kept running past your 2 miles. They wouldn't tell you how long you're running for. I remember that part of the assessment. Had to do a swim test. You do your, if I remember right, you had to tread water, 5 minutes no hands, 5 minutes no feet, and then 5 minutes float. Traverse 25 meters underwater in full flight gear. And there was some kind of swim, 25-meter swim. I think it was side stroke, breaststroke, doggy paddle, or something like that. I think 3 different types of strokes you had to do. Then psychological evaluations, all that written stuff. Had to do a general aviator knowledge test as part of the assessment at the time. You had to do a day contact ride. And the first time I came assessed, I assessed for Little Birds. I got to fly a Little Bird. And of course, never flew one of those.
Like today?
Yeah. They're like it. Yeah, H500. Fly a Little Bird, little black helicopter at the time. Got to fly one of those. Had to do a night evaluation, which included plus or minus 30 seconds to a target. And I still remember where I went to.
Plus or minus. We got text the other night.
Yeah, the whole plus or minus 30 seconds anywhere in the world. So I went up flying to a place called Boyce Church, somewhere around Nashville. And during the flight, I got completely discombobulated, lost, couldn't find the objective. They took me to it. So I followed that portion of the assessment. And then at the very end, they give you a formal board. So I went to the formal board during Class A's and stuff. And it's at the end of the board, you can pretty much... I think low crawl into the belly of a snake to make you feel that low.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, they tear you up pretty
on purpose.
Good. Yeah. And the board's pretty horrific anyway. They make you feel pretty bad. So during that time frame there, at the end of the board, they tell you what's going on, and I did not get selected.
Change our light here. It went out on us.
Yeah, sounds good.
Why. There we go. Why did it do that? I blame my camera guy for that.
So anyway, at the end of the board, end the board, I did not get selected. They have you leave. Then you have you come back in a few minutes later after they discuss what they're going to do with you. They did say, we want you, but we're not selecting you now. Come back later. So
okay.
So I had to come and assess a second time.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'd assessed twice. Some people, of course, they tell you you're selected, and get assigned, you're the kind of guy we want, but come back later. We're not taking you now. And some people get told, not only don't come back.
You shouldn't be flying a helicopter?
Yeah, you should. Yeah. They say, not only don't want you, don't ever come back.
So, how long before you come back?
So that was roughly just maybe a little over a year into the unit. Second time I assessed, it was needed more experience. Did what they told me to do. A couple more years.
Okay.
Before I assessed again.
Pretty much had to go through the same thing again.
Same thing again, start to finish.
But you knew the board was going to be. You already knew the board was going to make you feel like.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, they during the board they told me they looked at my general aviator knowledge test and looked at it and said, "You were here before, and you even knew what to study, and you still did this bad." Yeah, that was the news they broke to me. And,
That's funny.
but I did get selected. Yeah.
And then, of course, you probably had to go through. Did you have to go through the green platoon process when you were selected?
Yeah.
Did they call it that then?
Yeah, sure was.
Okay,
Yeah, it's called Green Platoon.
Which you are an instructor at
Which
now.
I'm an instructor at right now.
Right.
So, so after after they cut your orders and stuff, they PCS you up here to Fort Campbell. So you start out with combat skills, where I work today. And we teach our 4 core subjects of combat skills. We teach land nav, the shooting, combatives, and the medical, which I work for the weapons committee. So I work on the firearm stuff portion. So you do that for the officer Green Platoon, which is 3 weeks. And then, of course, you could do your flight training. Okay. Initially, you got to get qualified in the aircraft. So I was flying Little Bird at the time. Okay. So I had to get qualified in Little Bird, get rated in it. So once you do that, you do auto rotations and just learn how the aircraft flies. And then, of course, you do your...
Now, you'd already done this type of training before.
Yeah.
It was just a matter of doing it to that aircraft, which you hadn't flown before or flown that much, and B, to their standards.
Yeah. Oh, actually, let me reverse that. So first you start off with BNAV.
Okay.
Basic navigation. So let me back up. So you didn't learn to fly the aircraft yet. So you want to get qualified in your plus or minus 30 seconds. That's kind of where they start you at night. So now you're learning to navigate in a local area with the compass in the aircraft, the clock, and the HHM handheld map. Yep, you got your handheld map. Right. Yeah. So you're working that map, and you got it, and you use a joint operations graphic. Of course, you got all your lines drawn on that. We used to take the maps and stick a masking tape on the back, so they get kind of thick. Right. On the back, and you draw your lines on there, and of course you're navigating plus or minus 30 seconds using the HHM handheld map and all the stuff. Yeah. So lots of failure. Again, winners have lost more than losers ever tried. Right. Type of thing. So of course you got to learn to fail before you learn to win and make it. So there's a lot of failure there. Yeah, making it. And then once you do you get qualified in your BNAV, then they move you onto the aircraft.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where you learn auto rotations more.
Yeah.
The emergency stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And you get check rides. You get qualified on the aircraft. Once you're qualified on the airframe itself, then you start doing, you got environments and mission tasks. So we do some of our Little Bird mission stuff because I was a Little Bird lift pilot. So I had to learn how to do the specific missions of carrying customers on board, landing on, buildings, rooftops, in between things, and of course, environment. So you do desert, mountains, which is in Albuquerque. You do your over water, and we went to Pensacola area. That's where we did ours.
Besides Little Birds, what was there? Chinooks?
Eventually, I've switched to Chinooks, yeah.
How was that change?
About 50,000 pounds worth. Yeah, it's quite a big difference.
What about controls?
So, Little Bird, has standard helicopter controls. You got your anti-torque pedals, your cyclic, and your collective. Once you go into Chinook, you've got to think all the thrust, which still works same as the collective for the most part, right? But a little bit different. They call it thrust, Big aircraft there. The cool thing, when I learned to fly the Chinook, I had to go to Fort Rucker and go to the aircraft qualification course to get qualified in the Chinook itself. It was a CH-47 Delta at the time. And I still remember picking that thing up to hover the first time. Just the sheer power of the airframe is amazing. Right? Yeah. Did you drive a 53? No. I mean, I've been in a 53.
Those are pretty powerful aircraft, I suppose. But
Chinook
versus a Little Bird, the power from a Chinook.
So like with Little Birds, of course, most aircraft are limited with power. Of course, we give the customer not how many people they can carry. We give them a weight. And of course, you're probably accustomed to that, flying aircraft back in the day. And of course, Little Birds, we'd sometimes take a scale out there. Again, the customers say each of their guys weigh this much. I'm like, yeah, before you get an aircraft, prove it. Like, so you weigh way more with your ammo or stuff that, when you fly Chinook around, how many customers you can fit in the back of the Chinook? How many Rangers?
All of them.
One more.
That's right.
There's always room for one more. Because when I was flying in Iraq, I mean, you're going to cube out before you hit weight limits. Afghanistan a little bit different because of the environment.
Right, because of the mountains.
Yeah, and all that. Elevation and all that stuff. Yeah, a lot different.
I remember on a 53 coming back from a target. We had to go to a boat from Afghanistan with a target. This is January of 2002.
Yeah.
And of course, Afghanistan's landlocked, so we had to fly to the Kitty Hawk.
Okay.
Which was out there in the Gulf, and we had to fly over, and it took us like 4 ARs to get there. And we had to fly over a mountain, and I woke up, of course, hydraulic fluid all over me, obviously, and woke up, and I was like, oh, it's daylight out the back, and there's, there's a Marine sitting on the tailgate with, the 50 cal sitting there, and I go off the back, and I realized that shutter was us trying to make it over a mountain at the time.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? And I look over the edge. Oh, whoa! Like, I've never been that high in a helicopter before.
Man, sometimes it's better to have blind faith what's going on.
Yes.
I mean, I'm sure you've been plugged in at the time.
Yes.
And when things get hairy, some stuff you just don't want to listen to.
Yes.
It's like,
and
click,
mostly it was
I don't hear
with
it
160th pilots. Was the hairy part. And then I remember leaving Kandahar on a mission one night, and this is in a 53, and they have gunners that are right behind the pilots on both sides of the aircraft. Yeah. And they have a piss tube behind the co-pilot. It's on the port side of the aircraft. And we had just left, and I had to piss, and they practiced shooting their flares out or whatever. And then I'm sitting there pissing, and then this gunner, I don't know why, decided he didn't want to test fire right then. He test fired, and I pissed everywhere. Because I thought we were getting hit, right? And I started pissing all over the damn place. It was so funny.
Fuckers. This never happened to me in particular, but you want to see a pilot get their ass beat by a crew chief, and you're in a cockpit of a Chinook, or Black Hawk or something like that, and you piss in a piss bag. Before you throw it out the window, make sure you say, right gun or left gun, pull in the minigun.
Okay.
Because that piss bag will go outside that door, smash against the minigun, and piss will be over the the crew member's
every
face.
time.
Yeah. So you'll see a pilot get their ass beat. You got to make sure you say, pulling the gun, throwing up a piss bag.
Flying in those things. They were so much fun. Wouldn't give it up for nothing. I'd do it again. Do it again.
Yeah, fond memories.
So, you were in 160th for how many years?
From 2000 to 2008. So 8 years.
So pretty much the heyday.
Yeah. I was on
Afghanistan and Iraq.
Yeah, I was on the. So after I got a Little Bird Company. By the way, I was there when we filmed Black Hawk Down. Mm-hmm. I wasn't over in Somalia at the time. I was a Ranger instructor then. But I was there when they filmed the movie, and I was too much of a new guy to go. So I did not go to Morocco to go film the movie. But so a bunch of my buddies went over there anyway. But so I was on the initial invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq. Mm-hmm. So 2001, 2003. Yep. Although I did not go into country into Afghanistan, I stayed at Masira Island, which I think you were at Masira too, right?
We were at Masira when we launched in, correct?
Yeah, launched in.
Yep.
I did not go to the initial part, so I stayed on Masira Island the whole. Mm-hmm. I was only there 6 weeks, so not a very long time. We did send 2 aircraft in the country, MH 6s, and we did send the AHs wound up going in twice.
Right.
And the MHs were in country. They were supporting Delta Force at the time.
Yeah, I don't think we used a single 160th, but I think we did 53s the whole time, which worked out great for us. Those Marine pilots, they fully intend to be walking with their Marines. When brownouts mean nothing to those guys. Yeah. They were coming in. A lot of tailgates were damaged by them, you know what I mean? It's okay. We got on the ground and made it happen. But good. So, you were there until 06, you said?
2008.
2008.
Yeah.
And then is that when you retired?
No. So 2008, I wound up getting a job at Fort Rucker, working at SEER School.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I worked at SEER School. Yeah. I worked at SEER School for a couple of years until I retired.
Now, did you go to the SEER School at Bragg, at McCall also? Yeah. So how did those compare?
So I went to Bragg when I was Ranger. Mm-hmm. I went right after. So I probably remember I jumped into Panama for Operation Just Cause. So in between Just Cause and Desert Storm, because I did go to Desert Storm too as a Ranger, I went to SEER School
at McCall.
Yeah, at Fort Bragg Camp McCall. Man, I would tell you, after working at Fort Rucker and having gone to Fort Bragg, man, I'm not gonna lie, the Air Force has got some good ideas with SEER. Mm-hmm.
They're the proponent for that too.
Yeah, so JPRA, Joint Personnel Recovery Agency, kind of does that, but Air Force does a lot of SEER stuff, and Air Force also has an MOS, or AF, Air Force Specialty Code they call it, right? SEER specialist. I remember having, being an Army guy, having, oh man, Air Force guy, what am I going to listen to you for? Come on, you're in the Air Force, right? And after working at Fort Rucker and working with a bunch of retired Air Force SEER specialists, man, them dudes are way super squared away. I mean, unbelievable professional, SEER specialists, NCOs and stuff, and man, pretty squared away. And I think Fort Rucker, I'm not gonna lie, I mean, after being an Army guy, I think Fort Rucker's got the best of both worlds, where they take some Air Force smart mentality to some Army knuckle dragger mentality,
right?
And they formulate their school, because when the school was formed at Rucker, almost all the guys that worked there, well, just about all of them that formed the school, went to Bragg. So now you got all the guys that are forming the school, and then they grab some specialists from the Air Force, and I think it was an awesome blend. Honestly, I'm not going to lie, between the two schools. It was, a little bit of Army, a little bit of Air Force, blended together.
Sweet.
Yeah, it was.
So,
and I was there right after it was formed, maybe a couple years.
Okay. Then you retired.
Yeah, then I retired.
Okay. And then, but you were, did you come back here?
Yeah, so after I retired, I came back to Clarksville, waiting on a job, and I wound up working for the same company you worked for, Blackbird.
When we were there, you were doing the restraint stuff, and
so I worked I worked for U.S. Force Iraq Personnel Recovery Division. So for Blackbird, so I didn't do the TTL stuff that you would have done. So I worked at Al-Fal Palace doing real world personal recovery, in Iraq for about a year's time frame.
How did you get to Green Platoon?
So I didn't know what I was going to do when I retired. Before I retired, I got obviously a very strong interest in firearms and shooting. I've been a competitive shooter since the early '90s. When I worked at Rucker, I'm like, I didn't know what I was going to do, so I worked on getting to be an NRA instructor. Okay, so I worked on getting that rating. I thought that'd be something I could use in the future. So I did that when I was there, and a buddy of mine owned a gun shop in Greenbrier, Tennessee, and I used to frequent that place to buy guns, again, strong interest in firearms, and he knew I had an NRA instructor rating and approached me. He's like, hey, you any interested in teaching for us? So I started teaching for his gun shop there in Greenbrier, and so now I worked a little bit of instructor ratings, teaching firearms to civilians. And at the time, after I got done contracting in Iraq, I worked at a helicopter simulator called the AVCAT on Fort Campbell briefly for about 8-9 months, something like that. And during that time frame, a position was opening there at Green Platoon, where I work right now, combat skills. And I found a position. I had a little bit of experience in firearms training, and of course, my competitive shooting background. Anyway, applied for the job and got the job. Yeah, 2012. So I've been working out there 12 years now.
So that's where my son competes too. He pays a mortgage shooting.
Yep.
Pretty much, he learned initially from me, but then he snatched the pebble from you at the same time.
Yeah, so to speak.
Right after that.
Yeah,
right? I didn't know about competitive shooting. I just knew about
shooting,
more or less, assaulting.
Yeah.
Right. But that whole world of competitive shooting is different.
It is different.
But I will say this, I think you've said it before too, civilians are better shooters. I
Absolutely.
learned more from civilians than I ever did in the military about shooting.
So my very first shooting match I shot when I was in Dahlonega, when I was a Ranger instructor, and it was in Gainesville, Georgia. I don't even remember the name of the range, but I see the sign said shoot match Wednesday. So I'm thinking, I'm a staff sergeant, Ranger instructor, been deployed twice, been to combat twice. I jumped in Panama, got a Ranger tab, and I'm thinking I'm a total badass, right? And I'm going to go to this shooting match and go win this thing.
Wear it out.
Right, I'm going to go wear these civilians out, not because of any skill I had, just because of who I was. And I came in DFL. You know what that means,
Dead
right?
fucking last.
Dead fucking last, right? So, I mean, the only way you saw my name up top, you took that sheet and
flipped it over.
Flipped it upside down. Yeah. So, I was like, man, I know shooting and training. Thought I could shoot a pistol, and I couldn't. So, and of course, the nation's most elite shooters, in the military, where they go to learn?
Civilians.
Go to civilians to learn how to
That's right.
shoot.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you pretty much steered Houston into doing a USPSA type, not USPSA type shooting.
Yeah, USPSA shot
handgun
shooting
stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then
Again, going to the gun shop.
Who talked him? I think I talked him into 3-gun, but I didn't introduce him to it. Somebody else introduced him to it, but he didn't want to get into 3-gun. He just wanted to stay with handgun.
Yeah, the handgun
You know what? Just do it.
And I remember talking it to Houston at the time. I said, man, why do you want to go into 3-gun? Why don't you stick with the pistol first and build a good base? But, man, he jumped, still shot pistol shooting, but pretty much into the 3-gun right away when he started shooting matches. And, of course, I remember I took him to a match before he turned 18. And, of course, Missy had signed signed a permission slip just to make sure it was all kosher and stuff. Yeah.
And then shortly after that, you had to put your uniform on again.
I did.
You had to
of course, you remember that
squeeze
story.
into that warrant officer uniform with your terrible shoes.
Yeah.
And
we went down to MEPS there at Nashville.
Made him raise his right hand. You gave him the oath of enlistment.
I did.
Before he joined the Army, went into AMU and all that kind of stuff. So, that was pretty cool.
Yes.
You got in it though.
The shoes, I'm glad I had a little warning. I had to lose a few pounds to fit into that thing, and the shoe story was pretty good.
Yeah, they were just falling apart.
Yeah, the core frames. Yeah, the patent leather shoes are falling apart, and I remember walking there in my socks there and talking to was a Marine captain, I think.
Yes.
Was there? Yeah, Marine captain. I said, yeah, after I'm done, I'm gonna throw my shoes out. I told him all about it.
So, based off what you've done, what was the best part about leaving Rangers to go into being a pilot? Is it the obvious reason? You ain't walking no more?
Carrying big, fat, heavy rucksacks.
That was the best part?
Yeah, I think that's the best part. But I would tell you, looking back at my career, and I had a pretty good career. I got no complaints about it at all. I chose some pretty good jobs, pretty choice jobs. The best decision I ever made was become a warrant officer.
Right.
Yeah. A lot of guys, they stay, enlisted, Ranger the whole way, or a lot of guys I would Ranger battalion with, they either went Delta Force, Ranger, SF,
right,
or go to flight school. I've got a squad photo of me and my guys in Desert Storm, and there was out of my squad 3 of us all went aviation, went to all become pilots. And the 160 is full of former Ranger pilots and SF guys, and there's quite a few of us.
When
SEALs.
Folks, I do have some younger military guys come on, what do you think I should do next? And I'm like, you should go to Batt. They started off their career and they're like, I want to be SF, I want to do this. Like, well, maybe you should try Batt.
Man, I'm gonna tell you, live your dream. Guys have dreams, and you don't know what you don't know.
But the Batt guys are looked at differently than everybody
They
else.
are, I think, I would say so.
They are accepted, like if there's let's just say, for instance, getting selected to go to the Q course, and it was between 2 folks that were equal. And let's just say it was a numbers game, even though it's not, which we all know it is. If one's a Bat boy and one wasn't, they're going to take the Bat boy.
Yeah.
It's just going to be that way. I'm sorry, but it is.
The cool thing about, I would say, Ranger is, when you talk to Ranger, you tell him to jump, he's going to answer how high. You tell him to run on that wall, he's going to run on that wall. You need everything killed in that objective, Rangers will kill everything.
Everything.
You need hostage rescued, probably pick a different tool.
So, what was the thing you wish, or I'll say wish, what was the worst part about leaving Batt and becoming a pilot?
I remember when I was in Warrant Officer Cannon School, I told somebody to do something, and they told me no. And I didn't know how to accept it. I never experienced it.
Right.
Because again,
kind of like being in the civilian world.
Yeah, in Ranger battalion, you tell someone to do something, they're going to do it. When I was a Ranger instructor, I dealt with students. I tell a student to do something, they're going to do it. And it was the discipline. It was hard. The adjustment from coming to, infantry Ranger mentality to aviation is huge adjustment.
When I retired, working in the civilian world, I had to work with some engineers, and I changed jobs from Blackbird. I went to Physical Sciences Incorporated out of Massachusetts, and talking to those civilians and engineers and stuff, I wanted to start a 1911 daily because I could not.
Oh, I'll bet.
I could not deal with working with some of those folks, and surprised HR wasn't in my ass more. You know? It was rough. You know,
and that's why I work where I work today.
Right.
Because I'm still with
worlds, right.
Army guys. You know, to me, as a contractor working there, it's a true honor and privilege for them to have me, right? Because they don't have to have me, and I get to influence the future Night Stalkers.
Yeah.
You know, I get to give them a subject I'm totally passionate about. You know, firearms training, you know, and shooting, which I totally love. So I can do my hobby at work, which I like, and I get to train those guys. And I'm around still as cadre. We're around a mixture of green suiters, active duty guys, and old guard guys like us. You know, so I still have old guys I'm with that have the kind of the same mentality I do, and yet I get to hang out with these active duty guys, and I get to become pretty good friends with them. You know, the new guys, and of course, influence students. You know.
So now what? What is Tony doing? You just gonna stay there as long as you can stay there?
Man, I really do love my job. I work for a pretty good company. I got no complaints with that. And I'm gonna stay there until I retire, get tired of it, or get fired. Honestly,
fair enough.
I got nowhere to go. I'm pretty happy with it. And you know, we had some. You probably remember me talking about. We had some bad times at work for a while with pretty toxic command active duty guys working there, which I hated at the time. And I'm like, man, I'm not gonna let you beat me because I will be here when you leave. Because you know, the commander there, captain, only there for about a year, and the first sergeant's only there for a couple years, and it sucked for a while. I mean, I still enjoyed the teaching part. It's just dealing with the BS that this command had. I really didn't like. But now we got good commanders, good first sergeant the past couple of years, and it's been absolutely awesome.
So if somebody was watching this conversation right now and they were doubting going to flight school or something like that, or they still had some doubts, what would you tell them to get them over the hump to just do it?
Man, I think I would tell them, I mean, flying's pretty awesome, I'm not going to lie. And, you know, again, like I said, becoming a officer, best decision I ever made, you know, because now, you know, my retirement's pretty good. I'm not going to lie. You know, Army took care of me really good because I would have been a degenerate if it wasn't for the Army. You know, the Army gave me everything. Yeah. I mean, everything.
Point you where to go, tell you what to wear.
Gave me everything. Man, I would say, you know, do it. Don't let hurdles get in your way. Don't let, you know, people that doubt you, don't let them get in your way. I mean, you know, if you want to fly, do it. And of course, you know, flying's not all fun and games. You know, I mean, there's, you know, weather, which is huge.
Right.
That's an enemy in itself.
Yes.
And then, of course, you got the enemy if you deploy. And of course, you know, every time you step in that helicopter, it is trying to kill you.
Yes.
Every time it is, its job is trying to kill you. It's your job to stop it from killing you. And of course, you got at night, dust landings. I mean, all kinds of stuff. You know, you got to worry. It's not just all.
Would you suggest, hey, you know what? Get a flight simulator like Byron's, the one I think put together to motivate you.
Certainly.
I mean,
you know, certainly, especially if you are in the military. You might know someone that has access to
not that I'm
military
flight
simulator.
simulators or anything, but you know,
it was fun. You know, I definitely could see the advantages of that. You know, of having a flight simulator, or even getting a private pilot license. I mean, I didn't have any of that. I had zero flying experience, nothing except for being in the back of one of them things.
Right.
You know, and no prior experience required to be an Army helicopter pilot, which is a very good opportunity. I mean, the Army and the military in general is. I mean, there's no shortage of opportunities to do something. I mean, schools. I mean, there's just tons of stuff to do. You know, and again, I go back to the Army's using the slogan again: "Be all you can be," and that's what I saw. I mean, I try to go to, all the schools that I could get, and I'm pretty fortunate to be able to go to a lot of pretty badass schools in the Army.
Right.
You know, I got no complaints.
Yeah, that was the best part of the schools.
Yeah, schools,
especially SEAR school.
Yeah.
To me, I like that one.
And I got all kinds of SEAR schools behind my belt too after working there at SEAR school. Yeah.
So, all right. So, anything else you got for the guys? This is for Skeeter again.
Cheers, Sláinte.
I think we had a good bullshit session here. It's long enough. It's sitting at 45 minutes right now.
Holy mackerel, is that long?
Yeah.
That was good. Y'all
Yeah,
going,
so we just like to do these bullshit sessions. This will come out in a couple weeks or so. We'll just have you on again. We'll talk about something else.
Sweet.
Maybe we'll do shooting gear.
Man, I
something
would
like
love
that.
to talk. I would love to talk about shooting.
Yeah, shooting gear or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, and if you want to get started on, 3-gun or whatever, or 1-gun or 22 stuff.
Yeah,
get
I'm
into
doing
that world.
I'm doing
you know
that
what I
stuff
mean?
too. Yeah.
So, all right. So, again, look at Black Armor Guns or you don't have a website. Never mind.
No, I don't do that
You're
stuff.
right. Tell me about a website. We'll have
See
more of
Black
these
Armor
up.
Guns.
Yeah, Black Guns. We'll have Tony on again soon, and watch your 6.
All right. Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.